My name is Judith. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. This happened when I was 7 years old. My parents had been divorced for about a year. To a child, divorce just means a lot of back and forth trips between two different houses. That year, for winter break, I was scheduled to visit my dad. I remember being so excited. In my 7-year-old eyes, my dad was still a hero, even if he slept too much or got grumpy for no reason. One afternoon, the sky was gray and freezing. Light snow was covering the park near our house. I was playing with my cousin, throwing snowballs and trying to build a small snow wall. Suddenly, an old pickup truck pulled up. The paint was peeling and it was covered in dirty slush. The engine sputtered and groaned before stopping right in front of the park gate. A tall, rugged-looking man in a heavy hooded jacket stepped out. "You're Judith, right?" he asked, waving me over. I looked at him, confused. He introduced himself as my dad's best friend. "Your dad asked me to pick you up," he said. "Something urgent came up at work." My cousin just shrugged, thinking it was normal. I followed the man toward the truck. However, after we left the park, he didn't turn toward my dad's house. He started driving in the complete opposite direction. I felt uneasy and told him he was going the wrong way. He just answered casually that he knew, but he had to stop somewhere first. He told me not to worry. I sat there quietly like a good girl, but as we drove, the scenery became unfamiliar. The roads were dark, lined with crumbling buildings and rotting wood. Finally, the truck stopped in front of a wooden shack. The roof was sagging under the weight of the snow. He told me to get out and follow him inside. I froze at the doorway. A foul smell of rot and mold hit me so hard I felt nauseous. In the living room, I saw two young women lying motionless on the floor. An older man was crouching next to them, inspecting their bodies in a way that felt wrong. I stood there, paralyzed with fear. "Is that her?" a raspy female voice called out from the corner. After the man who brought me gave a nod, the woman grabbed my arm. She dragged me down a hallway to a tiny bedroom. Inside, there was only a bed and a single lamp. "Stay here, don't make a sound," she barked. She tossed a piece of dry, stale bread at me and ordered, "Eat!" Then, she locked the door from the outside. I was trapped in that room for 5 freezing winter days. During the first few days, I cried until I couldn't breathe. I pounded on the door constantly, screaming for my dad until my throat was raw. But the only answers were the whistling wind, heavy footsteps on the floorboards, muffled arguments, and creepy laughter. Sometimes, I heard women moaning mixed with the sound of wood crackling in the fireplace outside. Every time the door opened, a gust of icy air rushed in like a knife. The woman guarding me was very mean. Every time she came in, she would yell, "Shut up! You're making the whole room stink!" I had been wearing the same dirty clothes for days. I had wet myself on the first day because I was so scared, and that horrible smell clung to me. All I had to eat were those pieces of dry bread, which were hard as rocks because of the cold. I cried while I ate. Back then, I kept wondering, where is my dad? Why hasn't he come to save me yet? On the 5th day, the door burst open. But it wasn't my dad who ran in. It was my mom. I sobbed in her arms. As she led me out, the stares from the 2 men and the woman made me shiver. They watched me closely, and some of them even gave a slight, twisted smile. I noticed the 2 young women from the first day were gone. On the way home, I kept asking about my dad. But my mom just asked if I was hurt or if they had touched me. She drove me straight to her house and didn't even stop by my dad's place. It wasn't until I was 15 that my mom finally found the courage to tell me the truth about those 5 days. That truth destroyed the last bit of love I had for my father. It turns out my dad knew exactly where I was being held, but he did nothing to save me. At the time, he was hiding out at his girlfriend's house. She was an addict just like him. They were both high on drugs the entire time. He owed the group that kidnapped me a massive amount of drug money, and I was taken as collateral to force him to pay. My mom, unable to reach me, had driven across state lines in the middle of a blizzard because she felt something was wrong. When she found my dad and realized what happened, she had to scramble to borrow money from everywhere she could to pay off his debt. It was such a large amount that it took her almost 2 years to pay it back. But because she paid, she was able to get me out of that horrible place. My mom never called the police. She said the situation was too messy, and she didn't want to drag me through the trauma of police statements or courtrooms. She just wanted to take me home, scrub the filth off me, and burn those stinking clothes I wore that week. I haven't seen my dad since that incident. He has never called to see how I am doing. Maybe that's for the best. To this day, I can never forgive him for letting me stay locked in a cold room for 5 days just because of his drug debt.
Before we continue, I just want to say thank you. MHS crossed over 10,000 subscribers in 2025, and that's all because of you. Every single view, like, and share means the world to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This year, we're setting our sights on 50,000 in 2026. So if you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that button, join the community, let's grow this together. Now, back to the stories.
It's been 14 years, but I still remember every detail of that autumn trip to the Appalachians. Every time I hear someone mention West Virginia, a shiver runs down my spine. My name is Rachel. I was 26 and had just quit my job. I wanted to find something new in my life, so I decided to take a few months to travel across the eastern US. My only companion was Duke, my 2-year-old pit bull. I planned the whole trip in just 3 days. Back then, technology wasn't what it is today. All we had was a paper road atlas and a flip phone with no GPS. The trip began, and I'd never felt so free and relaxed. Duke was just as happy and excited. My old job had been so busy, and I hadn't made enough time for him. People always said that fall in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia was beautiful, and they were right. The road curved through mountains covered in yellow and red leaves. But the deeper we drove, the emptier the road became. My phone lost service, and the radio couldn't pick up a single station. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, I noticed the gas gauge was almost on empty. The nearest gas station on my map was still miles away, and I started to get worried. I kept glancing at the gas gauge, terrified of getting stranded on a lonely mountain road. But after a sharp turn, a small town appeared. What was strange was that it wasn't on my map at all. The town had only a few scattered wooden houses, a small church, and a single gas station. The sign at the entrance was too faded to read the name. I immediately pulled off the road and stopped. I parked at the gas station and breathed a sigh of relief. I filled the tank myself, then went to the office to pay. There was a small building behind the pumps, with the door half open and the inside quite dark. When I stepped in, a thick smell of old cigarettes and dampness hit me, making me wince. The man sitting behind the counter made me uneasy. He was skinny, with long hair that covered half his face, and his hollow eyes stared at me without blinking. I put the money on the counter and asked for directions back to the main highway. He stayed silent for so long I thought he hadn't heard me. Finally, he spoke. "There's no way back from here. To get to the highway, you gotta go north more than 17 miles, to the fork in the road, then turn left." I paused. Wait a minute, 17 miles? That doesn't make any sense. I just came from the highway, and it took me less than half an hour to get here. When I said that, he just shrugged and turned back to the old newspaper on the counter, not looking at me again. Outside, Duke started to bark. Through the window, I could see he was tense, staring at the forest behind the gas station. Duke never reacted that way unless something was seriously wrong. A feeling of dread washed over me, and my gut told me to leave immediately. I rushed back to my car and started looking for the way I'd come in. I drove to the end of the main street, which ended in a dead end, a broken brick wall with thick woods behind it. I turned around and took a small dirt road next to the church, but after a few minutes, it also stopped suddenly in the middle of a bunch of trees. I tried turning right onto another road, which just led me back to the gas station. I drove around this tiny town a few times, my desperation growing. Every road led into the woods or back to the starting point, as if the road I'd taken to get here just a few minutes ago had completely disappeared. The sky turned a deep purple as the sun went down. With no other choice, I went back to the gas station with the faint hope that the man would give me better directions. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men were leaning against the wall outside the office. One was tall and thin, and the other was short and heavy. They looked at my RV and giggled to each other. When I asked for directions again, the tall man pointed north, exactly the way the employee had told me to go. The heavy man kept nodding with a creepy smile on his face. I knew there was no point in asking for help, so I left without another word. I sat in my car with the doors locked, looking at the map again. Duke was growling nonstop, his eyes fixed on the 2 men watching us. The gas station employee had now come out and stood between them. All 3 of them were looking at me. I carefully studied the map and couldn't find any road like the one the employee had described. That area was only marked as thick forest with no roads. I guess they were trying to send me deep into the woods for some reason. I started to cry. The feeling of dread I had been holding back just burst out. Just as I was panicking and didn't know what to do, a pickup truck pulled into the gas station. An older man got out. He saw me sitting in my car with a look of terror on my face, then looked at the 3 men who were silently watching me. He walked straight to my RV and tapped lightly on the window. I hesitated for a moment, looking carefully at his face before I decided to roll the window down a tiny bit. He asked if I was looking for the way to the highway, and when I nodded, he glanced at the 3 men who were starting to move closer. He told me to follow him immediately and not to hesitate for a second. His voice was so serious and urgent that I couldn't help but obey. I started the car and followed his pickup truck. We passed the church, and he suddenly turned right onto a trail that I swear I hadn't seen before. It was completely hidden by a row of thick trees, almost invisible in the dark. The dirt road was narrow and bumpy, just wide enough for my RV to fit through. After a few tense minutes of driving, the main highway appeared before us like a miracle. The man pulled over to the side of the road. When he rolled down his window, his face was very serious. He took an old map from the passenger seat and showed me that the other road stretched for 17 miles and then ended in the middle of nowhere, with only a few rusted cars and struggling families living there. He said the road they had pointed me to was a dead end. He said a few cars had been left there, and that the people at the gas station were not good people. If you had listened to them tonight, you wouldn't be here for me to tell you this. When I tried to ask more questions, he shook his head and told me not to be curious about things I shouldn't know. He told me to drive away right now, not to stop anywhere, and if I saw any other unnamed gas stations in this area, I should absolutely not stop. I drove all night. Duke was right next to me on high alert. It wasn't until we reached a city and the sun began to come up that we dared to stop at a crowded rest area. After sleeping and getting enough energy back, we drove for 8 hours straight to get home. After that trip, I never had any intention of taking a second trip in my life. To this day, I don't know exactly what was waiting at the end of the road those 3 men at the gas station pointed to, but I will always remember the look in the eyes of the gray-haired old man before he drove away. He saved me from something terrible so that I would have a chance to tell this story. I never thought my senior year would end that way. I should have seen the warning signs, but at 17, I wasn't thinking about things like that. I grew up in a small, quiet, and safe town. Everyone knew each other, and if you did something stupid, you could bet your parents would know before you even got home. It was all fine until I fell in with the wrong crowd. My group consisted of 3 people: me, Ryan, and Derek. Ryan was different. He genuinely believed in devil worship. At first, I thought it was just an act, or a way to get attention. Then there was Derek, who wasn't like Ryan, at least not at first. He was a kid from a broken home, just like me. Derek spent more time at Ryan's house than at his own. He had a quiet anger, a dangerous kind of anger. I think I stuck with them just because there weren't any other options in this small town. It was the week before Halloween, and Ryan told us he was going to throw a costume party since his parents were out of town. That night, the house was packed. Ryan promised there would be a surprise. "Something you guys will never forget," he said with his eyes lit up. I thought it was just a joke, maybe a seance or some stupid scare prank to mess with the girls. I was terribly wrong. Around 11 p.m., Ryan called us down to the basement. His dad had turned it into a game room with couches, a pool table, and a big TV for video games. But when I walked into the room, the atmosphere was different. Everyone was sitting in a circle, muttering, their eyes fixed on a door in the corner. Ryan and Derek were standing next to the door, grinning as if they were about to perform a show. Ryan yanked the door open, and I felt a wave of panic. Inside was a woman, tied up and gagged. I knew her, and so did everyone else in town. She was a homeless person who always wandered the streets, collecting cans and muttering to herself. "What the hell is this?" I asked. Ryan just smiled and said, "Tonight, we're playing a game." Derek walked over, holding a set of darts, and announced, "A living dartboard." Laughter erupted throughout the room. I wanted to believe it was just a prank, that they would untie her and let her go, laughing at how scared we all were. But then, Ryan threw the first dart. It stuck in her arm. She let out a helpless cry through her gag, and her body twisted in pain. Everyone just stood there, watching. Their eyes were so emotionless. Then, Derek threw another one, which landed right below her collarbone. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. Then others started throwing darts. Not everyone, but some just sat there as still as I was. Things had gone too far, and I had been wrong about Ryan. "This is crazy. Let her go," I finally said, my voice cracking. Ryan turned to look at me, and his smile disappeared. "You don't get it? This isn't just a game." Derek reached into a black bag and pulled out a long knife. "We're offering her to the master." I was disgusted. They weren't just playing a game, they were going to kill her. I turned to leave, but Ryan's older brother, who had been filming the entire thing, was blocking the door. "If you leave, this tape goes to the cops or your parents," Ryan said. He made sure all of us were guilty. I glanced around. Everyone was in costumes, so I couldn't see their expressions, but I could hear crying starting to spread. Then a girl whispered in my ear, "I'm calling the police." She had hidden her phone in her purse. I stood in front of her, blocking the view as she made the call. Meanwhile, Ryan had dragged the woman to the center of the room, placing her in a circle drawn with white chalk. Ryan raised the knife, his face wild. The woman struggled, trying to scream but couldn't. And then, a siren blared, and flashing red and blue lights shone on the basement windows. Ryan's face twisted in anger as he turned to us. "Which one of you a-holes did it?" I lunged straight at him, my shoulder hitting his ribs, making him stumble backward and fall. The knife dropped to the floor. Derek ran to pick it up, but I was faster. I grabbed the knife and cut the ropes on the woman's wrists. The basement was in chaos. Everyone was running, pushing each other up the stairs. Some people stood there, frozen in fear. The woman was finally free. She ripped off the gag and let out a painful scream. The basement door burst open. The police stormed in. Ryan was still trying to get the knife when they restrained him. Derek ran, but was caught shortly after. We were interrogated for hours. Most of us weren't charged because we were spectators, not participants. But Ryan and Derek were different. Ryan was sentenced to life in prison. Derek got 25 years, and Ryan's brother got 15 years. I still see their faces in my nightmares. I left town as soon as I could, moved states, changed my phone number, and cut off contact with anyone who reminded me of that night. To this day, I never dare to go to another costume party again. Some stories stick with you, even years later. They haunt me late at night. The story of the Miller family is one of them. It's not because of how violent their deaths were, but because of what I found out afterward. That year, I was 23 and lived with my family in the quiet little town of Franklin, Tennessee. The Millers lived 2 houses down from us. David Miller was a mechanic, and his wife taught elementary school. They had an 11-year-old daughter named Lily. Lily was a unique kid. Her skin was pale, almost anemic looking, and her eyes were cold. She didn't have that carefree innocence you'd expect for her age. While other kids played outside, Lily would just stand by the fence, staring. I tried talking to Lily many times, but all I got back was an empty stare. That August, the distant wail of police sirens broke the peaceful afternoon. I was coming home from work when I saw police cars and ambulances crammed in front of the Miller's house. Neighbors were gathered, whispering. They said they'd heard loud bangs earlier, possibly gunshots. I was so confused and worried that I hung around to see what was happening. The police taped off the area, and about an hour later, 2 black body bags were carried out of the house. News quickly spread through the neighborhood. David had shot his wife, and then himself. Lily survived by hiding in the bathroom and calling 911. The whole town was in shock over the tragic event. Everyone felt terrible for the Millers, especially Lily. How could a child possibly get over losing both parents in one night? Poor kid, a neighbor said, wiping away tears. I kept thinking about Lily being led out of the house. She wasn't crying, her eyes fixed straight ahead. At the time, I figured the shock was so immense that it had shut down all her emotions. The police concluded that David had suffered a mental breakdown due to work stress, leading to the horrific incident. At the funeral, I couldn't take my eyes off Lily. She sat upright in the front row, wearing a black dress. A lot of people from town came to the funeral. Everyone was crying, feeling deeply for Lily's situation. They came to offer her words of encouragement and hugs. But Lily just sat there silently in the front row, her eyes never leaving the 2 caskets. A few days after the funeral, her aunt from Memphis picked her up to raise her. Life in town slowly went back to normal. A few weeks later, a friend who worked at the police department invited me out for a beer. We talked about a lot of things, and eventually, the conversation drifted to the Miller case. There was something off about it. The bathroom door wasn't locked. Lily was just standing there, like she was waiting for us to arrive. There was no sign that she'd been through anything traumatic. What do you think? Ben shook his head, taking a long swig of his beer. I've been in this job for 10 years. Kids who witness violence usually react in one of 2 ways. Either they're so shocked they can't say anything, or they scream hysterically. Lily was different, too calm. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then he spoke again. It's for the peace of mind of those left behind. They have to move on with their lives. The Miller story gradually faded into just another local tale, with people in town occasionally bringing it up, mostly curious about how Lily was doing now. 3 years later, a couple moved in and bought the Miller house. They started renovating the entire place. They left a bunch of stuff out in the yard and by the front gate for anyone who wanted to take it for free. I was walking by and saw a notebook in a box of old things. Curious, I picked it up. The first page said, Lily's diary. My heart suddenly started pounding faster. I don't know when that name began to stir such mixed feelings in me. I turned to the next page, which had crude but chilling drawings. A man, a tiny child. My brain automatically processed the information in a way I didn't want it to. Below the drawings were lines of pencil writing, some pressed so hard they tore the paper. Dad hurt me again. Mom knew but didn't say anything. At this point, my hands started to tremble. I kept turning the pages. I can't run away. I screamed, but no one heard me. Mom said I had to be good, but why be good to bad things? Each page opened up a piece of hell. A sentence was repeated on many pages, each time written more clearly. No one came to help me, so I helped myself. When I turned to the last few pages, the true meaning finally emerged. The drawings changed. No longer a victim, Lily began to draw herself as someone with power. She drew her dad lying next to a gun. Lily wrote, "I'm almost ready. They won't hurt me anymore. It will be like in the movies." I stood frozen, the notebook dropping to the ground. So Lily wasn't just a surviving victim. She was both a victim and the one who did it. Lily had quietly endured abuse. When she realized no one was coming to save her, she decided to save herself, in the only way an 11-year-old child could think of. Honestly, my emotions were incredibly mixed at that moment. I burned it that night and never told anyone about it. I decided I'd be the only one who knew the truth. Lily was living a different life now, and I was sure it was a much better one. The town was still peaceful, and the new couple who moved in, they were getting ready for a new life too. The best thing was to just let everything go. Life sometimes isn't what we imagine. Whether they are victims or perpetrators, everyone carries their own pain and untold stories. We can never truly know everything someone endures, and sometimes silence is the only way to protect yourself. There are stories you want to forget, but they haunt you even more. I've tried to bury the memory of that brown-haired girl for the past 13 years, but I can't. I'm always regretful and tormented because she died due to my cowardice. It happened when I was 12 years old. Lily was my classmate. She always wore old clothes and had a sad demeanor. I learned from other classmates that Lily lived with her mom in a very small house on the outskirts of town. Life was quite difficult because her mom was blind. The beginning of the horrific story was a day I was late for school. As I turned onto the road leading to the school, I saw Mr. Anderson's familiar car parked on the side of the road, its engine still running. Almost every student at my school knew his license plate by heart. It wouldn't have been surprising if I hadn't seen Lily get out of the car. She stumbled, clutching her stomach, then bent over and vomited right by the roadside. "I don't want to repeat this again. Remember that?" Mr. Anderson's voice came from inside the car. Lily didn't answer, just kept her head down and continuously wiped her mouth. I hid behind a large tree, observing everything. Mr. Anderson drove away, leaving Lily standing alone. I didn't understand what was happening. Maybe Lily was sick, and Mr. Anderson was kind enough to take her to the hospital. But he left her here, and Mr. Anderson's voice sounded threatening. Mr. Anderson was a respected figure in the entire town. He had taught and was the coach of the state championship basketball team. Every summer, he organized free summer camps for underprivileged children. That evening, I told my mom what I had seen. My mom was washing dishes, then suddenly stopped. Mom asked me to repeat the story, asking if I was sure I saw Lily get out of Mr. Anderson's car. I nodded, confirming it. Mom quickly grabbed her phone. I sat listening to her talk to someone on the other end of the line. Mom recounted my story. "I think something isn't right. Lily is only 12 years old." I was confused, not understanding anything. But when I asked again, Mom just remained silent and looked at me with a rather serious gaze. 2 days later, a police officer came to my house. He explained he had spoken to Mr. Anderson, and he said Lily had a cold, and he kindly drove her home early. There was nothing unusual. When my mom asked about Lily vomiting, the police officer replied that it was just due to the flu. He tapped his finger on the table, emphasizing that Mr. Anderson was a very reputable person in the community. Without concrete evidence, they couldn't do anything more. I saw the worried look on my mom's face, but she didn't say anything more. The next day at school, I went to Lily during lunchtime. She sat alone, looking tired. But when I approached to ask how she was, Lily immediately showed a bewildered attitude, as if she wasn't used to communicating. When I mentioned seeing her with Mr. Anderson the day before, Lily immediately cut me off, and there was even panic in her eyes. "Sorry, I have to go." Lily left and I watched her go, and happened to see Mr. Anderson standing by the cafeteria doorway, looking directly at me with a cold gaze. After school, Mr. Anderson called me over. He commented that I was a good student, but sometimes excessive curiosity could cause trouble for others. Lily was going through a difficult time with her family situation, and he didn't want to see me bothering her anymore. Mr. Anderson placed his hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. He warned that if he saw me continue to bother Lily, my grades would be affected, and he might have to call my parents. I kept my head down, replying obediently. From then on, I no longer talked to Lily. Every time I saw her, I would turn my face away because I remembered Mr. Anderson's gaze and voice that day. Sometime later, Lily started missing school frequently. When she was at school, she looked thin and tired. I noticed she often ran outside during class to vomit. Then Lily disappeared. That day, Mr. Anderson announced she was gravely ill. But for the next few days, Lily still didn't come to school. Then one day, the news of Lily's disappearance exploded throughout the town. The police searched for 3 days, and they found Lily at the edge of the forest, about 10 miles from town. Her body lay at the bottom of a cliff, with broken ribs and severe head trauma. Lily's sudden death shocked the entire town. Another horrifying piece of news was that they discovered Lily was 8 weeks pregnant during the autopsy. The police concluded that Lily fell from the cliff, possibly due to an accident. As for the baby she was carrying, they said they would not investigate to ensure Lily's privacy. Mr. Anderson was present at Lily's funeral. He stood in the front row, his face sad, his eyes red. From then on, no one mentioned Lily anymore, and rightly so, because she didn't have a single friend. Mr. Anderson continued teaching for another 5 years, then moved away as soon as he retired. Everyone still remembered him as a dedicated teacher. Now, 13 years after Lily's death, I am old enough to fully understand what happened. I understand why she vomited and was afraid, and I live with torment every day. If I had been braver then, if I had continued to care about Lily instead of turning my back, perhaps Lily would still be alive. But I did nothing. I just stayed silent and let Lily die in loneliness. Every time I visit my hometown, I go to Lily's grave and apologize to her. My name is Gail, and I was 12 years old when this happened. Summer in our small Arizona town was always hot and quiet. My parents worked all day, leaving my 6-year-old sister Emma and me at home. Our single-story wooden house sat at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by tall oak trees. That day, it was around 2 p.m. Emma was lying on the living room rug, watching cartoons, while I sat at the kitchen table doing my homework. Our dog, Lucky, was sleeping by the back door, tongue lolling out from the heat. A loud banging at the front door startled me. It wasn't a polite knock, but heavy thumps. Emma turned her head to look at me. "Sarah, someone's at the door." I stopped my homework and walked into the living room. Through the window beside the front door, I saw a strange man standing outside, staring at us. His face and attire were so contrasting that I still remember them clearly. He was dressed neatly, but his face was covered in a thick, bushy beard. He held a pink briefcase with Mickey Mouse on it, which looked very eye-catching. When he saw me looking intently, the man smiled, pointing at the briefcase in his hand. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, partly because of its bright color, partly because I kept wondering, why would a grown man carry a child's briefcase? I didn't open the door. Mom had told us never to open the door for strangers when no adults were home. The man continued to wave, smiling. He pointed to the briefcase, then pointed to the door, as if to say he had something for us. "Sarah, what does he want?" Emma came over to me, her voice trembling. "I don't know. Stay away from the door." I pulled my sister back, my eyes still fixed on the outside. The man stood there for a few more minutes, then suddenly turned away. I thought he was leaving, but no. He walked along the side path of the house, heading towards the back. My heart pounded. I ran into the kitchen, looking through the back window. The man had reached the back door, standing right outside the wooden steps. He placed the briefcase on the ground, then grabbed the doorknob. Lucky sprang up, fur bristling, barking loudly. The doorknob was violently rattled. The door shook, but luckily, Mom always locked it securely whenever she left. The man stopped, looking into the house through the back door's glass. His eyes met mine. He smiled, then gestured with his hand for me to open the door. No. I shook my head hard. He continued to gesture, this time more urgently. Why did he want to enter our house? Why wasn't he saying anything? Emma ran to me, clutching my arm tightly. Sarah, I'm scared. Lucky barked incessantly, constantly lunging towards the back door. The man didn't seem afraid or annoyed by the barking. He just stood there, patiently gesturing for me to open the door. I ran to the landline phone in the living room. With the mind of a 12-year-old, I wondered whether to call Mom or the police first. Suddenly, Emma burst into loud sobs. I couldn't even make the call. I quickly dropped the phone and ran to my sister. I hugged her, trying to comfort her. Looking back at the man, he had pressed his face against the door, his smile wider now, his hand still waving. I tried to make my voice loud and clear. I've already called the police. They're on their way. Through the glass, I saw the man stop gesturing. He tilted his head, as if listening. Then he gave a chilling laugh, as if he knew I was lying. He continued to stand there looking into the house with patient eyes, as if he could wait all day. Suddenly, I remembered. Grandma was on her way to visit us. She would be here around 3 p.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2:45 p.m. I quickly pulled Emma back into the living room to call Grandma. My voice trembled as I told her about the strange man. Listen carefully. You and Emma run to the back bedroom right now. Lock the door, and Grandma will be there soon. I did exactly as she said. We ran into Mom and Dad's bedroom in the back of the house, and I locked the door. Emma crawled onto the bed, while I sat close to the door, listening. Lucky was still barking, but now the barks were less frequent. 5 minutes stretched like an eternity. Finally, I heard the engine of Grandma's car. The car door slammed shut. Footsteps on the pathway. Sarah! Emma! Grandma's voice echoed from the front. I opened the bedroom door, ran out, and hugged her tightly, crying loudly. Grandma kept asking if my sister and I were okay, and she checked to see if either of us was hurt. She quickly ushered us inside, locked the door, and called the police. My parents also rushed home. There were no signs that he had tried to break in. The back doorknob wasn't damaged. There were no footprints in the soft earth under the windows. The police concluded the man likely had mental health issues. The man never returned. It's been 11 years since that day, and I still vividly remember his smile. And I still wonder, what was in that pink briefcase? Why did he want to enter our house? Some questions never get answers.
I heard my mom's voice calling to open the door, just as she was still talking to me on the phone. I live with my mom and my 5-year-old sister in a small town. That day was the birthday of my sibling and me. We share the same birthday, May 17th, and are 9 years apart. Every year my mom prepares a very lavish birthday party for the two of us. And my grandmother would come to the birthday party with a cake she prepared herself. On that birthday, we waited a long time, but my grandmother hadn't arrived. My mom called her several times, but there was no response. The dining table was only missing my grandmother's cake to be complete. A few minutes later, my mom received a call, and immediately her demeanor and expression changed. "Where is that place? I will be there right away." My mom's voice became more choked as she spoke, and she quickly took long strides toward the front door, leaving my sibling and me in confusion. "Mom!" I shouted. My mom turned around in surprise to look at us. "I'll be back soon. Melvin, remember to keep an eye on your sister." Then my mom quickly drove away, and I locked the door carefully before going back inside with my sister. To be honest, I didn't like watching over her and all. Kathy was extremely loud, unpredictable, spoiled, and got bored quickly. I believed my mom would be back soon. About 10 minutes later, I received my mom's call. "Melvin, are you and your sister okay?" My mom seemed very panicked. "Yes, we're watching TV, but I'm not sure when Kathy will get bored and start being needy, so please." "Melvin, listen." Mom interrupted me with a very serious tone. "You must not open the door for anyone,
no matter what. Do you understand? Yes, but what's going on? I asked, feeling confused. I will be back as soon as I can with you guys. My mom hung up, and I fell into a state of confusion, looking at the phone and then at my sister. She was still engrossed in the music show, while I felt a sense of anxiety and anticipation that was hard to describe. About 5 minutes later, there was suddenly a knock at the door, immediately capturing our attention. "Mom is back," my sister exclaimed happily. I quickly put my finger to my lips to signal Kathy to be quiet. It definitely wasn't Mom. She had a key and would open the door herself, never knocking like that. I hugged Kathy, turned off the TV, and the knocking at the door continued at a slow, steady rhythm. "It's me." It really was her. It was definitely her voice, but it sounded so soft and calm. "Mom is back, Melvin," Kathy reminded me, and I grabbed my phone to call her number. "I'm listening, Melvin." Mom's voice on the other end was worried and rushed, picking up before the first ring had even finished. "Mom, are you at the door?" I asked skeptically. "No, Melvin, I'm on my way home." I immediately picked up Kathy and ran quickly to the nearby bathroom without even turning on the light inside. I locked the door tightly, covered Kathy's mouth with my hand, and whispered to her, "Can we play hide and seek? Whoever hides the longest without being found will get a dollhouse." Kathy eagerly nodded, put her finger to her lips to signal silence, and sat snugly in a corner, holding her teddy bear. The heavy footsteps grew louder, and I guessed the person was coming inside the house. I whispered into the phone that was still connected. "Melvin, it's me. The police will be here soon. You need to protect your sister and yourself, okay?" Mom started to cry. I sensed that the situation was no longer simple. Kathy was playing with the bottles in the bathroom, something my mom forbade her from touching every day. "Let her be. At least she isn't asking for anything right now," I muttered. "Kathy, Melvin, Grandma is here." This time it was my grandmother's voice. I immediately signaled for my sister to be quiet and then spoke into the phone. "Mom, Grandma just arrived, right?" "No, Melvin," my mom yelled into the phone. "That's not Grandma. I'm right next to her. She passed away just a few minutes ago." Mom broke down in tears. I was shocked to hear that news. So what on earth is in my house right now? The phone died and disconnected. "No, not now," I exclaimed in frustration. "Open the door right now, Kathy, or I'll unwrap all your birthday presents." Oh God, this time it was my own voice. Kathy looked at me with confused expression, took a few steps back, and burst into tears. I tried to comfort her, but I was the one who had completely lost my composure and clarity at that moment. The sounds of police sirens rang out, but I still couldn't be sure that my sister and I were safe. I held my sister tightly, curled up in the bathtub, shaking uncontrollably and praying. The sounds of the police and my mom calling only made me more panicked than ever. It wasn't until the police broke down the bathroom door and brought us outside. Kathy couldn't stop crying, while I was filled with doubt about everything around us. The police extracted data from the outdoor cameras at my house. Images of a strange creature appeared. It was tall, extremely thin with long limbs, and its head had 2 enormous speakers. "Siren head!" an officer exclaimed after watching the camera footage. After my grandmother's funeral was completed, my mom took us to live in a busier city. I never mentioned that birthday party again, and had never told anyone about this until today.
I'm Vincent, and I've been living a chill life with my grandma since I was 4, after my parents split up. My mom's got a new family now, and my dad sadly passed away in a car accident when I was 6. I went to college and ended up getting a job in the same town I grew up in. I didn't want to leave my grandma alone, She worked hard to take care of me, so now I want to take care of her. Since I was a kid, I've been tagging along with my grandma to church every weekend. I love the peaceful vibe of this small town. A couple of months ago, I met Katie at the local church on a weekend. She's beautiful in such a unique way. The features on her face are like this perfect mix of American and Asian beauty. At least that's what I thought. And Katie later confirmed it. She's petite, cute, but still totally stunning. Katie was the one who started talking to me at church. She was friendly and laid back, but also pretty cautious and private about her personal stuff. I couldn't help but feel my heart race every time I saw Katie. I couldn't deny it. I really liked her a lot. All I knew about Katie was her name and a little bit about her mixed background. I didn't even know how old Katie was. One day after church, Katie asked me to grab something at the Dunkin' nearby, and I had no reason to say no. We talked for hours, but it felt like only 30 minutes. Around midnight, Katie asked me to give her a ride home, since it was getting late. Even if Katie hadn't asked, I would have done it anyway, just to show I care as a man, and also to get to know her better. Something felt off from the start, but I was so caught up in the excitement of a new love that I didn't even notice. Katie didn't give me the exact address. She just gave me directions to drive instead. After more than 20 minutes of driving around, with Katie giving directions and checking her phone, I finally made it to the highway. But I didn't ask any questions. I was just patient, doing whatever Katie wanted. When I got pretty far from town, I suddenly realized I was on an interstate highway, and it was going to take almost 2 hours to get to the end. I asked Katie again, and she was totally sure about the route we were on. I didn't ask any more questions and just focused on driving. Katie got a phone call and started speaking a language I'd never heard before, sounding pretty cheerful while she did. I figured it was Katie's family, and I was right because she got home pretty late. After Katie got off the phone, I turned to her and asked if it was her family who had called. Katie looked at me, smiled, and answered with a dreamy look, "Probably." After driving a bit farther, she suddenly told me to stop because we were there. I looked around confused and was pretty sure we were still on the highway. Katie was sure and confident about what she said. She hopped out of the car all cheerful, walked around to the driver's side, bent down, and knocked lightly on the window. "I've got a surprise for you." Katie waved her hand, motioning for me to get out of the car quickly. I was totally confused by what was going on, but my love-struck heart was too silly to think twice. I reached for the door handle, but then I saw someone pop up from the bushes behind Katie, which made me stop for a few seconds. When I looked closer, I was shocked to see a bunch of other moving things besides that black shadow from before. Katie's attitude totally shifted when she saw me hesitate. I whispered to Katie to hurry and get back in the car, but she got even more upset and told me to get out. There was a rustling sound from the bushes behind Katie, and then 4 tall guys in black suits rushed over all at once. I freaked out and shouted, "Katie, get back in the car, quick!" But those guys in black weren't after Katie. They were after me. Katie stepped back, crossed her arms like she was the boss, and watched as her tough guys kept attacking my car and cursing. Luckily, I locked all the doors and started the car real quick. I slammed on the gas, and the car shot forward, dragging one of them for a bit. I was freaking out, but it wasn't just from the sudden attack. It was also because of the crazy betrayal from Katie, who I thought was sweet and genuine. Every second on that highway felt like it was dragging on forever. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest, and cold sweat was dripping down my forehead, even though it was chilly outside. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, I kept imagining those dark figures chasing me, and just the thought of it made me shake. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles were turning white. I drove all the way to the next state, found a motel, but couldn't sleep at all because I was still in shock. The next morning, I drove home, totally out of it. I was thinking I should call the police and report what happened.
wondering what happened to the guy I hit last night while I was driving away. If things went south, would I be the one who ended up committing the crime?
My story begins in the summer when I was 14, in a quiet town. I am Logan, a mischievous and somewhat stubborn boy, like any other teenager. I moved to the town when I was 10 years old with my parents. The town where I lived was nothing special, just a quiet place, far from the busy and noisy city. I often played with a group of friends my age. We spent almost the entire summer exploring the hidden corners of the town, searching for daring challenges to satisfy the curiosity of youth. Near my house, there is an abandoned warehouse, old, gloomy, and quite spacious. That warehouse always drew the attention of me and my friends, but at the same time, it also scared us. My mom once said that the warehouse was used to store something extremely frightening, something she didn't want me to know about in detail. But Mom's warnings seemed to be nothing more than passing wind to a stubborn teenager. To us, that only made the warehouse even more intriguing. We often played around the warehouse, sometimes daring each other to see who would get closer or who dared to touch that rotting door. But it all stopped there. There was curiosity, but also no small amount of fear. None of us dared to actually step inside. The warehouse exuded a mysterious, eerie aura, as if warning anyone who came too close. One day, while we were gathered outside playing, I suddenly caught sight of a shadow moving inside the warehouse. I looked closely and realized it was a girl, about our age. She stood there, between the dim light and the darkness, her demeanor calm, as if the warehouse held no fear at all. We all stopped, wide-eyed, unable to believe what we were seeing. How did she get inside? And why did she dare? Her bravery amazed and impressed us, but at the same time, it sparked our curiosity more than ever. The whole group decided to get closer, trying to see more clearly inside through the dusty old window gap. Each of our steps was slow, as fear tightly gripped each of us. As we got closer, I smelled a foul stench coming from inside, so strong and unpleasant that I had to wrinkle my nose. My friends started to shudder, and a few of them immediately vomited, unable to hold it back. My heart was pounding, gripping tightly to my trembling legs that couldn't run. But just then, I heard a frantic, terrified scream. One of my friends had fainted right on the spot. We quickly took him home in a panic. When he woke up in the hospital, his face was still pale, his eyes filled with terror. He said that he had seen a hand reaching out from the gap in the door, a pale white hand. We didn't dare say anything more about what had happened. Fear still surrounded each of us. The locals, after hearing about it, immediately called the police. A few mornings later, the sound of police sirens echoed through our small town, with engine noises and flashing blue and red lights surrounding the area of the abandoned warehouse. The truth that the police revealed shocked us and was beyond belief. In the abandoned warehouse, the police found the remains of about 190 people in various stages of decomposition. Many of the bodies were uncovered or only partially covered. Some of the bodies were placed on ambulances, while others were just lying on the floor. Other bodies were stacked on top of each other, blocking the doors in some parts of the building. Maggots, flies, and other insects covered the floor and clung to the bodies. In many transparent plastic bags, the decaying fluid had filled them, causing the bags to burst and spill onto the floor. Many of the bodies, including those of children, were placed in buckets or cardboard boxes to catch the leaking, decaying fluids. The fluid had spread across the floor so much that it caused officers to slip several times while moving the bodies outside. So the terrifying thing my mother had always alluded to, which was stored in that warehouse, turned out to be human remains. But it wasn't something that had happened in the past. It was still carrying out its purpose, unnoticed by any of the locals living nearby. It was known that the warehouse used to belong to a couple who founded a funeral service company. Because they didn't pay rent, failed to pay taxes, and were sued for defaulting on payments to the cremation service, the couple was evicted by the landlord. They were charged with corpse abuse and faced a sentence of 15 years in prison. As for me and the other friends, we have undergone dozens of psychological treatments over the past 10 years. Every night I have to use sleeping pills and sedatives just to fall asleep. The story above is based on a real case that occurred in 2023. John and Carrie Halford, the owners of the funeral home Return to Nature, took money for services but neglected 190 decomposing bodies in a warehouse for over 4 years, giving fake ashes to the families. In September 2023, residents around the town of Penrose, Colorado, began noticing a foul odor lingering in the air. At first, they thought it was the smell of a leaking septic tank or the scent of dead animals. Later, it was determined that the odor of decay was coming from the abandoned house. This used to be the warehouse of the funeral company Return to Nature, known for its advertisement of green burial services with no embalming chemicals or metal coffins. On October 5, 2023, nearly a dozen police vehicles surrounded the abandoned warehouse. The FBI field officers in Colorado later stated that this was the most horrific task of their lives. I'm cleaning my new house with Buddy, my dog, just like any other day. My eyes happen to land on the wall calendar. July 4th, 2025 is fast approaching, and for a moment, a vague sense of dread rises within me, pulling me back to the memories of July 4th last year, a day I'll never forget. The evening of July 4th in Cedar Creek, Texas, always followed a familiar routine. Independence Day celebrations at the town park starting at 6 p.m., followed by fireworks at 8 p.m. I've lived in this small town for 10 years. Fireworks exploded in the sky like giant fiery flowers. I sat on a wooden bench near the playground, observing familiar faces in the sparkling light. Kids ran around with small flags in their hands. I still bring Buddy here every year. My buddy is so afraid of fireworks that every boom makes him jump and cower. But aside from the fireworks, he loves all the other activities. I stroked Buddy's head, trying to reassure him. "It's okay, Buddy, just a little longer." But the fireworks had only just begun. The high school marching band had just finished their performance, a show filled with off-key trumpets and uneven steps. The tuba player was a big, heavy man in a dark red uniform. The uniform was soaking wet and too tight for his body. I remembered seeing him stumble and fall during the midday parade. The heavy tuba rolled down the street, and everyone around burst out laughing. I laughed too, and he looked directly at me at that moment. While watching the fireworks, I coincidentally saw him again. Even though we were dozens of yards apart, I still felt that cold, strange gaze. I looked at my watch. The fireworks were far from over, but Buddy couldn't take it anymore. We left the park and walked home. Most of the neighbors were still at the park. There was only the distant boom of fireworks and the click-clack of Buddy's paws on the sidewalk. As I was opening the gate, I heard steady footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw the tuba player walking toward me. He was still wearing the dark red uniform, his eyes fixed on me. He stopped in front of my gate. He didn't say anything, just stood there staring. Sweat still beaded on his forehead, even though the air had cooled. I nudged Buddy into the yard. He let out a low growl, the fur on his neck standing on end. 25 years. The man suddenly spoke, his voice hoarse. I tried to stay calm. "Excuse me? 25 years I've played the tuba in this band. No one has ever dared to laugh at me." He stepped closer, his hand gripping the gate's iron bars. The streetlights illuminated his face, casting deep shadows under his eye sockets. I could clearly see every bead of sweat, every angry wrinkle. "I'm sorry about earlier today. I didn't mean to. Do you know what it feels like to be laughed at by the whole town?" He interrupted me, his voice trembling with anger. "Do you know what it feels like when your life's passion becomes a joke?" Buddy growled louder as the man raised his voice. I tightened my grip on Buddy's leash, unsure how to respond. He let go of the bars and stepped closer. I smelled sweat. He stared intensely at me. "This day, next year, you'll understand that feeling." I turned and ran toward the house door. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, pushed Buddy inside, and slammed the door shut. The click of the lock made me feel a little safer. I turned off the lights inside the house, and peeked through the curtain crack. The man was still standing there, facing my house. 10 minutes passed, and he was still there. Then he walked up onto the porch. The sound of his shoes on the wooden planks made my heart pound like a drum. Buddy hid under the coffee table, breathing heavily. I heard his footsteps moving around the house, from the front door, past the side windows, then to the backyard. He was checking all the entry points. Finally, he returned to the living room window. I saw his dark silhouette through the thin curtain. He pressed his face against the glass, his breath creating foggy circles on the window. "I know you're in there." His voice was low, seeping through the glass like a sinister whisper. "You can hide today, but next year, on this day..." He paused, leaving a terrifying silence. "You won't be able to hide anymore." I heard his footsteps descend from the porch. I waited another 10 minutes before daring to look outside. The street was empty. He had vanished. But on the window glass, faint traces of his breath lingered. I didn't dare turn off the lights all night. Buddy lay beside me on the sofa, his eyes alert, staring toward the door. The fireworks had long stopped, but their echo still lingered in my mind, along with his words. Soon after that incident, Buddy and I decided to leave town and find a new place to live. That's how we ended up in this house. I truly hoped never to see that man again, but his words still haunt me endlessly. Will he really come back? Or was it all just an empty threat?